In this video, we discuss the theme of Homo Economicus. I've already chalked out the most important themes and issues which are related to the novel, especially when it comes to questions and answers. So, after discussing the theme of spiritual crisis, we are now going to talk about theme of Homo Economicus. Homo Economicus. Now, the novel Robinson Crusoe can also be read as an allegory of the Homo Economicus, which is Latin for economic man. Homo Economicus means economic man, right? And in Das Kapital, which was published in 1867, a book by Karl Marx, Robinson Crusoe was cited by Karl Marx as a very nice example of the pre-capitalist man. Okay, and Jan Watt, a very famous literary critic of Stanford University, connected Crusoe's narrative with the modern myth of bourgeois individualism. Karl Marx is a very important philosopher and economist. In fact, he was a polymath of the 19th century, whose theories about the capital and whose analysis of the societies were extremely important in the intellectual tradition of the 20th century, and also even today we use Marxist theories and Marxian concepts. And about Karl Marx, you will come to know in detail in the third semester when you will read the history of the Victorian period. So, Jan Watt, the literary critic, connects Crusoe's narrative with the modern myth of bourgeois individualism. Bourgeois, bourgeois. Bourgeois means middle class. So he connects this entire narrative of Crusoe with the modern myth of middle class individualism, which prioritizes individual pursuits, individual prosperity, material prosperity of an individual, and self-aggrandizement, and so on and so forth. So Crusoe is like an economic man. He, like a man of economy, like a man of commerce, pursues monetary profit methodically, and all his voyages are having the same motive of making money. And Crusoe, like an economic man or Homo economicus, has the habit of profit loss bookkeeping. He always keeps an account of his profit and loss, and this is absurdly manifest in the episode where he kills the natives of that island where he got marooned. He counts the dead bodies, and this habit of profit and loss bookkeeping is, it looks very absurd and very disturbing. And this very mentality, which is often termed as the ledger book mentality, Ledger, ledger book. Okay, R is missing over here. This ledger book mentality is indicative of Crusoe's profit-oriented mentality. He has little or no moral qualms in selling Zuri, as I already noted this in the previous video of mine, and only feels the need of Zuri's companionship in a moment of material crisis. In my edition, which is the Norton edition of Robinson Crusoe, on page 91, this is the 1994 Norton edition of Robinson Crusoe. on page 91, the Norton Critical Edition, we see how he repents, how he rather recalls Zuri. Now I wished for my boy Zuri and the longboat. So this is how he takes the name of Zuri. He says, now I wished for my boy Zuri and the longboat with the shoulder of mutton sail, with which I sailed above 1,000 miles on the coast of Africa. But this was in vain. Now he is in dire need, and at that moment he is recalling Zuri as his boy, and also he's recalling his longboat. So these are the means of his escape. These are the means through which he can again self-aggrandize. So it's not a call for a friend, right? But call for an object. So Zuri gets objectified by Crusoe in this way. He takes Zuri's name and he mentions the longboat in the same breath. And in the narrative we see a symbolic transition from the primitive subsistence economy, where Crusoe produces crops, tames cattle in the island, makes his own clothes, bakes his own bread, makes his own tools, to the modern capitalist economy, where Crusoe hoards gold, and the economy of surplus, ultimately. So there is a transition from primitive subsistence economy, where you barely subsist yourself, where you can sustain yourself barely. That is a primitive economy. And then you move on towards a capitalist economy, where you try to hoard more wealth. And then you have the economy of surplus, from which you can again gain some capital and invest it further. His freedom in the island might be interpreted as a capitalist fantasy of total, unrestricted private enterprise, that is known as free economy. Okay, so that is another aspect of the novel, where you have Crusoe's freedom as depicted in page 94 of my book, that there were no rivals, I had no competitor. And he cherishes this, that there are no rivals to his self-aggrandizement. Here he can do whatever he wants. And that's why it resembles the economy of what is known as the laissez-faire. Laissezfaire. Laissez-faire means an economy which is minimally restricted by the government. So the government does not interfere. So you have no interference from the government in the matter of trade and commerce. So you have unrestricted private enterprise. Now Max Weber, another very important critic and another very important theorist, wrote a book in 1905. The name of the book was The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. So spirit here refers to the hard work and progress and all the ideas which are related to the progress of capitalism. There he tries to argue that Protestant religion was instrumental in the development of capitalism. Now, we have already noted that in the previous video I discussed the way in which the religious dimension of the novel has a contradiction with the way in which Defoe tries to consecrate or tries to advocate the bourgeois ideology, right? And this while discussing this point, I mentioned that we are going to come back to this. And now I'm going back to that point, and I'm referring to Max Weber's argument that Protestant religion was actually going hand in hand in the 17th and 18th centuries with the capitalist ideology. In fact, Protestant ethic influenced many people to be hardworking in the secular commercial enterprises. And Weber traces the origin of Protestant ethic to the Reformation. You already know, you have studied the Renaissance and you know what is Reformation. Now, before the movement, which is known as the Reformation, the Roman Catholic Church used to assure salvation to individuals. Okay, and clergies were required to salvage oneself. The individuals, if they commit any crime, if they commit sin, they would go to the clergies and seek repentance. That was the idea. Now, Reformation made these assurances null and void, and hence Protestants began to look for other signs of their salvation. And according to this religion, it was everyone's duty to believe that he or she was chosen for salvation. And lack of self-confidence or lack of hope for salvation was treated to be evidence of lack of faith in God, providence. So self-confidence and individualism thus replaced the priestly assurance. Now no more you have to go to the priest for pardon, right? In fact, you can communicate with God on your own. And that's why you would have vernacular translations of Bibles, as we discussed in the previous semesters, that how Bibles were being translated during this time, and it spread Protestantism all over Europe, and England cut off its ties with the Roman Catholic Church during this time. So Protestantism forbade wastefulness, luxurious life, and also donations to the poor, as it believed that providing donations to the poor would promote beggary, and limited donations to the church. So it prohibited all kinds of donations almost. And hard work was perceived as a service to God. So if you are hardworking, you are providing a service to God. Right? So you need not go to the clergy, you need not go to the church. You just communicate with your own God, with in your own way, and you just need to work hard. And this resulted in investment of money and in turn gave leverage to capitalism. Okay, so this is how Max Weber argues Protestantism and the Puritan ethics of hard work tried to promote capitalism. Now, Crusoe's island sojourn narrativizes this connection between religion and capitalism. He finds providence in the mundane, in the quotidian way of life, in the simple things, reads the Bible, works hard, lives a life free from social evils. Okay, and here I would quote the line from the text itself. In my book, it is on page 94, as he finds himself marooned in the island. Says, in the first place, I was removed from all the wickedness of the world here. I had neither the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, or the pride of life. I had nothing to covet, for I had all that I was now capable of enjoying. I was lord of the whole manor, or if pleased, I might call myself king or emperor over the whole country which I had possession of. There were no rivals. I had no competitor, none to dispute sovereignty or command with me. Right, so this is how he's, in a way, using a religious rhetoric which is Protestant, which is Puritan in nature, and in so doing, he is promoting the bourgeois ethics of individualism, which champions free trade, laissez-faire, as we have found, the free economy, unrestricted capital enterprise, individual enterprise. And he promotes frugality. Hence, the theme of Homo Economicus is enveloped by the narrative of spiritual or religious journey. Right? So, the contradiction that we were talking about in the previous video is not actually a contradiction. It is basically a hand in glove situation. Right? So, don't think that the text is having troubles to reconcile with the two apparently opposing ideas. One is spiritual, and another is the material dimension. One talks about spiritual awakening, another talks about money. It's not like that. In fact, both the things, the spiritual journey, the spiritual awakening that Crusoe is having by finding providence in every simple thing, is actually going hand in hand with his monetary pursuits. Apart from this, Crusoe's island life emphasizes his self sufficiency, which is again a virtue in capitalist ethos. It is valued. Self sufficiency, self dependence is valued in capitalism. And this goes to a degree of absurdity. And hence his isolation, his solitariness, his limited attachment to his family, and the absence of the eros, that is his desire, his sexual desire, his marital life, is always absent. His only comment upon his marriage is that his marriage was not, and I quote, to my disadvantage or dissatisfaction, unquote. All these things underscore his self-interest, and this is significant because supremacy of the individual at the expense of personal or group relationships, especially those based on sex, according to Weber, as Jan Watt contends, was one of the cornerstones of capitalist spirit. So you have to be celibate, you have to avoid the material pleasures of life, the carnal pleasures of life, the bodily pleasures, to pursue self-aggrandizement. That was not only a religious ideology but a capitalist ideology as well, right? And as Jan Watt notes, money or monetary affairs trigger the strongest emotion in Crusoe. In fact, Crusoe bursts into tear of joy when he learns that the Portuguese captain has taken care of his commercial affairs, and he again becomes very, very emotional when his wealth arrives from Brazil. So, these are the few examples where you will find that Crusoe is emotionally, spiritually attached with wealth. So, the spiritual awakening that you see in the novel is not so spiritual in nature, but it goes hand in hand with the material dimension of the novel, right? So that's all of this video. We would talk about another aspect of this novel in the next video. Incidentally, I would ask you if you can manage to read the essay in the Norton Critical Edition of Robinson Crusoe by Jan Watt, Robinson Crusoe as a Myth, okay, where you would find all these arguments. Right, thank you for watching.